Oh, hang on. Go live. We're going live. We're live now, apparently.
Okay, I can't see it yet. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, let me just refresh my... Yeah, I can see us. Okay, so...
It's got ads, is that correct?
Pardon?
It's got ads.
Ads. Is it playing ads now?
It's gone now.
Ah, okay. Oh, no, I can see, yeah, there's an ad. I think it's just an ad when you log on. Okay, that's the ads.
Oh my God, I look absolutely dead.
No, you look fine. So I think we'll just give it a few minutes. I think I can see we've got 14 viewers at the moment, 18. We're getting some people on. I think it's going to take a little while for the comments to start filtering through onto the questions here, or onto the chat. So yeah. So why am I not seeing that on my phone here? That's strange. Oh, okay. Yes, Mark Simpson. This is indeed live. We are speaking live from a very wet and gloomy Hampshire. So Spaghetti Carbonara is saying that we look fine. Don't worry. Okay. Well, hello everybody. This is a bit of a first for me. I've tried to do live streams before, but this is the first one where I've tried to have a guest. And as you can see, we've got Chris Bird here. But there are a couple of latency issues with the feed, so please forgive that. Basically, our lips aren't really moving in time with what you can hear. But I'll just say that I've known Chris for, I think Chris and I first met in 2016. She was the spinning instructor at my local gym, and I very quickly kind of got the idea that she was a very, very good spinning instructor. Up until then, all the spinning classes that I'd done had been, you get on the bike and you knock yourself out and ride as hard as you possibly can for about 45 minutes. And when I did Chris's class, it was all kind of on heart rate and fitness and very cycling related, and I quickly kind of worked out that we were speaking the same language. So Chris, maybe you could just tell us a bit about your background.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I've done fitness all my life actually, in one way or another, running, and I actually came to cycling kind of fairly late really, and became a qualified spinning instructor. Not the same as indoor cycling, just get that in early. And have built up all my spinning qualifications to level 3, so I'm just one step down from a master instructor. I've also got a stages qualification, and I'm also an intrinsic biomechanics coach as well. And kind of, I spend a lot of time making sure all my qualifications are up to date. I do a lot of reading, and just making sure I'm just the best coach that I can be. I came to road cycling again fairly late, just after I got into spinning. So I'm a fairly a newbie really. So I've just been road cycling for about 6 years,
Okay.
or thereabouts. So not an old timer. And kind of in terms of what I've done with cycling, I've done a fair amount of week-long tours out in the Alps, Mallorca. I spend a lot of time cycling mountains. That's pretty much me, really.
Okay, now I thought you'd been cycling a lot longer than 6 years.
No.
Okay,
No.
That's good. So I think we've got a few people coming through on the chat. Now I'll just explain what's happening here. I've got a camera set up here, so I'll be looking at the camera when I'm talking, but I've got my laptop down here. So when I turn down, that's me looking at the questions. So let's see, we've got Karen Harrison, hello from Nova Scotia. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Karen.
Hello, David. And we've got somebody from Cape Town. Oddly enough, we were just talking about South Africa. There's a possibility that I'll be coming to South Africa at some point to do the Cap Argus. So that's like one of my bucket list things.
Message there from one of my old clients, Stephanie Tweed, from the gym. You probably remember Stephanie, actually, from Active Less.
Yeah, I remember people, but I didn't know their names and stuff. So
she's got a good question there. We might want to bank for a little bit later, or we can hit that, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah, let's answer that question now.
Okay, so how should we be doing a HIIT session? HIIT, if you aren't aware, is high intensity interval training. And there are a number of different ways that you can do a HIIT session. They're typically quite short and sharp sessions. And there's not one really prescriptive length of interval for a HIIT session. But the trick is, the clue's in the name. So it is absolute full-on max effort. There are a few different versions of HIIT workouts on my channel, and they have massive physiological benefits. And you, depending upon what kind of HIIT session you do, if it's a fairly short HIIT session, you can get the physiological benefits with not so much physiological damage, which means you can recover from it pretty quickly. So you get the big bang for your buck, really. So yeah, HIIT's a word that's bandied around a lot, but it has to be done properly. For a HIIT session, it has to be your absolute max effort, and then you back off and get a recovery in between. So that's what a HIIT session is.
Well, I mean, that sounds rather painful, doing your...
No, they're fine. They're lovely, I love them. Nothing wrong with a HIIT session.
But it's very interesting what you were saying. Obviously, at the moment, we're all doing kind of turbo training workouts here, at least here in the northern hemisphere, because, here in Hampshire, the weather's just horrible. But it's very interesting what you were saying about, you do your short, high-intensity workouts on the turbo trainer, and then you try and save your endurance workouts for actually out on the road. So, I mean, maybe you could say a bit about that.
Yeah, okay. So, in terms of effort levels, if you've seen any of the workouts on my channel, that you work at different intensities. And just by default, when you're doing any kind of ride, whether it's a turbo session or whether it's a ride out on the road, that you will be working at different intensities. So right down from the bottom, from your recovery efforts, right up to those neuromuscular intervals, which will only last a couple of seconds. And the thing about that is that the further down the intensity spectrum that you work, the longer you have to work at that level to get the physiological benefits. So if you are working at an endurance level, so let's say zone 2 or zone 3, which is kind of endurance and tempo zones, at those levels you have to be working for many, many minutes, if not hours, to actually build up that strength and endurance. So if you've got the chance, you want to get those in out on the road, because you need to be spending, especially for an endurance, you need to be spending an hour and a half, 2 hours plus. When you start to get further up that zone spectrum, towards lactate threshold, for example, zone 4, zone 5, zone 6, zone 7, you need to be working only for a short amount of time to get the benefits from those kind of intensities. So they're great to do on the turbo or an indoor bike. It doesn't need to be a turbo. It doesn't matter, just as long as you can pedal it, quite frankly. And you can do those really short, sharp intervals on the indoor setup. And of course, you haven't got any outdoor distractions. You can just sit there and you can watch your bike computer, watch your timer, and you can really, really target the amount of time that's required to do those particular kinds of efforts.
Okay, so at the moment then, when we've got the weather the way it is, if you wanted to kind of build up your just general endurance, how would you go about that on a turbo trainer?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of endurance, as I said, in terms of endurance, you've got to be sitting there at zone 2 or bottom end of zone 3, for example, for well over an hour and a half. If I'm doing a really true indoor endurance session, I'd be sitting on the turbo for 2 hours. Put a film on.
I'm not sure I'd be able to concentrate on the...
Yeah, that's endurance. If you're working strength, then that's slightly different because, and I've just actually, one of the workouts I've posted this week, which is called a muscle tension interval. They're very specific kind of muscular strength intervals, low cadence, fairly heavy gear, and you could probably get one of those in 45 minutes. Okay. So if you wanted to work the muscular strength, that's it's not the same as endurance, but that's good to do over the winter indoors.
No, I think endurance is more your cardiovascular system, isn't it? And just your ability.
Well, yeah, and you can't buy your endurance. That is just the hours on the road. Yeah. The other stuff, the strength, you can really work on indoors. But endurance, you've got no choice, mate. Can't buy it. The pros can't buy it. You've just got to sit on the bike.
Or you just do 2 hours on the turbo trainer.
Yeah, lots of time on the bike. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a question from James D. What stretches do you recommend after cycling? I keep getting cramp in the thighs after long cycles.
Okay, well, Shane, I'm going to let you into a little secret, just between you and me. I never stretch. Shock horror. You can't stretch a muscle. It's just not possible. If you're doing your, let me just stop a little bit. I have a caveat there. Now, if you do stretches and they make you feel good, do your stretches. Are they doing you any benefit? The jury's out on that. There's a lot of conflicting research on the benefits of stretching because a lot of people don't stretch correctly, and actually they're probably doing more damage than good. So I don't personally stretch. What I do are my biomechanics releases, which are scientifically proven to have benefits for your joint functionality. It's a contentious issue, but this, you're asking me, I don't stretch, as I said, but if you stretch, fine. You're talking about cramping your thighs there after a long cycle. Head on over to my biomechanics playlists and have a look there on my channel. And it's not hocus pocus, I promise you. I spent many months doing in fact, it took me a year to get qualified as a biomechanics coach. And those exercises I personally do every single day, and I will do them every single day for the rest of my life. And it's made a massive difference to my personal mobility and functionality.
Okay, no, I mean, being an old school cyclist, I always sort of was led to believe that if you got cramp, then you perhaps weren't having enough salt in your...
So it's more about your height. You may be suffering from lack of hydration. So, possibly work on what you're drinking when you're doing on your bike. So are you having electrolytes maybe, or are you just drinking water? So you may want to get some different hydration on board. That might help you out.
Yeah, because I've only experienced cramp on the bike when I've been pretty tired.
I have never had cramp. Definitely bolt on the bike, but I've never had cramp. I'm kind of all over. I'd rather be peeing every half an hour than being underhydrated. I'm just it's just so bad for you. So yeah, hydration is key.
Okay, let's see if we've got any other questions here. What other exercises? This is from Cathal Keenally, if I've said that correctly.
Okay.
What other exercises should we incorporate into a fitness regime as well as cycling? That's a very sort of good question, and one I'm probably very bad at myself.
Cathal, funny you should mention that, because just this very day, this morning, me and my poor family have been roped into recording a whole load of strength exercises that are really great if you're a cyclist, to help with your strength and conditioning off the bike. Now, it doesn't matter if you're not a cyclist, actually. These kind of exercises that I've put together as these examples. And I've explained why they're good. And there's also another little workout coming up on my channel showing you why you should be doing other kinds of strength exercises off the bike. I don't want to give too much away, actually. But, there are a whole host of exercises. in terms of what I do personally, so I do my biomechanics releases. Just in the process of becoming a Pilates instructor as well, and I'm big advocate of Pilates for your core strength and overall mobility. So do yourself some Pilates or some yoga. Work on your core strength, because that will help your balance on the bike for sure. And do some strength exercises. You don't need massive amounts of equipment. You can do body weight exercises. I'm also a big advocate of TRX, suspension training, which is body weight. Also great exercises you can do through TRX. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I'm not just a cyclist, I'm a fitness instructor, and I do other stuff as well. But yeah, that's coming soon, that video, I believe in just about a week or so's time, showing you some exercises.
Okay, yeah. I know when I was super fit, I did the 7 Hills of Goodwood, which is quite a demanding ride, obviously going up the 7 Hills of Goodwood. And if you've never been to Goodwood, they're quite hilly. And I remember I felt absolutely fine in my legs. It was my lower back that I really felt it. I felt, I need to kind of work on that. So any sort of suggestions for lower back type strength?
That might not be strengthening. That's stirring up a whole hornet's nest, Leonard.
Oh, right, okay.
Lower back. You might not necessarily need to do strengthening. You might need to do something else.
Okay, it's another story for another time, probably.
Yeah, I could talk forever on that one.
Okay, let's see where we are with the questions here. Okay, greetings from San Jose. So David wants to meet up.
Then it's sunny in San Jose. I'm a little bit jealous about that. Wow.
So we've got a question from Karen Harrison. Very new to cycling. What would be a good mixture of bike trainer sessions to do each week? Okay,
great question, Karen. Well, that kind of depends on what goals you've got and at what part of your training cycle that you're in. If you'll pardon the pun, training cycle. So I personally tend to work on kind of a periodized program where I will have. I don't race, by the way. I'm just not a big fan of racing. That's way behind me in the past. But I do set myself personal goals, and so I will probably have something in the diary that I'm working towards. Might be a trip to South Africa. But I would have something in the diary, and then I would work on making sure that my form was peaking just at the right time for that particular event. So in the winter, which I tend not to do much stuff in the winter, and especially not at the moment, although I do normally travel in the winter and get some training in abroad, I've not really been able to do that. So I would normally work on aerobic base building over the winter. So anything that is sweet spot, intensity. I can give you loads more information on sweet spot.
So you might need to explain what sweet spot is.
Okay. So sweet spot training is a very particular intensity. It crosses, if you know anything about training zones, it crosses zone 3 and zone 4. It crosses top end of tempo, bottom end of lactate threshold. And there's a little explanation video on my channel about what sweet spot training is. But it's a particular intensity. Now, if you know your power numbers, it's between 84% and 97% of your FTP. If you're working heart rate, it's around about 80% to 83%, or maybe a little bit less, 78% to 83% of your max heart rate. And you're working in that intensity. And what you're doing is you're getting a lot of physiological benefits with trying to minimize the physiological strain on your body. What it means is that you can replicate that fairly hard intensity day after day after day. So sweet spot training over the winter will build your aerobic base, and that's what you need to help you if you want to do those really fun anaerobics. So you know the sessions that everybody wants to do on the bike because they felt that they really had a good workout and they're absolutely sweating buckets and they think it's amazing and it's the best thing for them. No, it's not. to work at that intensity and not really slaughter your body, you need to have a really good base to enable you to do those kind of big efforts. So sweet spot training, aerobic base building, tempo training, all that kind of stuff. Mix it up. Do those over the winter. When you start to get more kind of, that you can get more time on the road, then you don't need to do so much, obviously, on the turbo trainer. But you can still do those hard intervals, those high HIIT sessions maybe. You can still do HIIT sessions, and they will give you that kind of peak in intensity, but you're not doing so much damage to your body. Does that help?
But I think Karen's question was more along the lines of how often should you do?
Okay.
And I know that's not quite so easy to answer because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody and their level of fitness, isn't it?
You could train on the bike every day, but it will kind of depend on what level you were training at. If you were doing big zone 6 efforts every day, well, you're not going to last for it. You'll overtrain. It's called overreaching. You'll overreach, you'll overtrain. And so the answer is, it depends what level you're training at. You can pretty much train every day. A recovery day, by the way, is not a nothing day. People kind of don't know what a recovery day is. Recovery rides, the jury's out on recovery rides, whether or not they actually do any benefit, or whether or not you're better off putting your feet up. But yeah, you could train every day, but you can't do those really high-end efforts.
I'm a great believer in your last ride is only as good as your recovery from it.
Yeah, you've got to recover. Got another question. How long does it take you to run? Ha ha!
Got a question from Terry Mills. I think Terry was the chap
Hello,
down
Terry.
at the gym. I think he used to sit on the bike next to me.
He used to sit on your right.
Right.
Yeah, so just by the way, everybody, Leonard used to sit right in front of my bike when I was instructing. And, I let him in a little secret. I could see exactly what was on his bike to see how hard he was working.
Yeah.
Okay, how long does it take to plan a class? Wow. You might think I just rack up and sit on my bike and just pedal away and just chat away for England, which I do, obviously, of course, chat away for England. So I don't know if any of you have done any other workouts on my channel, but something like the Sacalobra ride took me 10 days, literally 10 full days to plan, to record, and to do the production on it. 10 days. Some of the other rides, 1 or 2 days. Yeah, there's a lot of work involved.
Okay, and then Terry was asking me, if I go back a bit, do you plan your rides in advance or just wing it and film narrate as you go? Well, I've got set routes, Terry, that I do fairly regularly. If I'm going to do a ride vlog, I tend to do the kind of the fairly similar routes. And as for the narration, then yeah, I am just sort of making it up as I go along because I just can't hold it all in my head and think about it when I'm on the road. So as soon as an idea pops into my head, I can take the camera out and start talking. So there you go. And yeah, I do the ride vlogs. I'm trying to do those get them published on the channel every Sunday now. They used to be part of the Bicycle Diaries, but now they're separate because it's as much work for me to do the ride vlog and the Bicycle Diaries as it is to do the ride vlog and incorporate it into the Bicycle Diaries.
Great question there. Great statement there, actually, from Dave Robertson. 80% race, 20% intent. Yeah. So it's a misnomer that you need to be working at very high intensities for your workouts. If you look at a spread over a week, 80% of your training should be at lower intensity. In fact, I would suggest it's probably more than that. Personally, I would do 95% at lower intensities and only 5%, so one ride max a week at full-on blasting, dying intensity. Most of my stuff is at a much lower intensity.
So what would typically be a low intensity and what would typically be a high intensity?
So, again, it depends on the time of year, but over the winter, I would be doing most of my riding up to top end of tempo, and then I'd probably slot in 1 or 2 sweet spot rides, and then I'll do 1 or 2 HIIT sessions. Unless I'm recording something like just so you know, folks, Sacalobra, when I recorded Sacalobra, I kind of held back for the first 3/4-ish of the recording because I've got to talk. But I went full gas at the end. It took me 2 days to recover from recording that session.
God.
Yeah, I mean, I was not holding back.
Yeah,
but,
I did your 90-minute endurance workout last Saturday, and there are some. I mean, even though it's an endurance workout, there was some pretty intense kind of intervals there, particularly at the end, and I don't think I recovered from that for about 2 days.
No, so and you need to let your body. If you do that really high intensity, then you just gotta let it's like we call it putting hay in the barn. You put the hay in the barn, and you've done the work. You just got to leave it there for a little while until you need to pull it back out to use it. So let your body recover. Really got to let your body recover before you try and hammer it again. Yeah. Else you just overreach. Yeah.
So
loads of fantastic questions. I'm missing loads of these.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can sort of say hello to Severio out there in Italy. Hello, Severio. Okay, we've got Andrew Williamson. Such a good idea. Well done. My question is, would you expect to see FTP increase after base training for 12 weeks, or is it an increase more likely during the build phase?
Okay, so you're sorry, so that I've missed the last bit there. So is it in the?
Where are we? Hang on. See if I can find it again. No, I can't. Where did that go?
Okay, I think he was referring to building your FTP. So if you want to push up your FTP, the most effective kind of training you can do is around threshold, sweet spot and threshold. You've got a really good aerobic base, but then you've got to really kind of top it up with those sweet spot intervals. Now, 2 years ago, I've lost track of time, folks. Where are we? What year are we in? 2019, I had a big tour of the Alps in September, and I did a 12-week block of sweet spot training, which was a mix of on the turbo and out on the road. So it was kind of a mix, and I was training 5 days a week. I was working actually I was instructing on top of that time as well, but my own personal training I was doing 5 days a week, and I really pushed it hard. I worked very hard on a number of things, but I managed after 12 weeks of very targeted sweet spot training to push my FTP up by 10%. Now that probably doesn't sound very much to a lot of people, but I'm a fairly developed athlete in terms of my base fitness level and my aerobic level. So a 10% gain is quite a lot. Now I know Terry put a thing up there about he did an FTP test 6 weeks ago, and he retested it again today. He got a 10% increase in 6 weeks. If you've not done any targeted training, and you get on, and then you set yourself some goals and do some targeted training, initially you could see a 10% increase in your FTP in a 6-week period. But the fitter you get, you hear the pro cyclists talk about marginal gains. So they've got to the point where everything's so honed that actually they can't make that many more differences to make a big difference, if that makes sense. So they're never going to see a 10% increase in their FTP. I mean, over a year they might, because they'll let their fitness drop off. But from their peak, they're never going to see that kind of massive gain. So me pushing up I was not expecting that much difference. That's the big difference.
Okay, I suppose at some point I'm going to have to do another FTP test and then hopefully see some sort of increase. But I'm very scared to do it.
Depends what you've been doing in between, Leonard.
Yeah, I know. I'll be honest and say that I've not been as committed as. I mean, when I've done the turbo sessions, I've I think I explained in one of the vlogs a couple of weeks ago, I typically do a 45-minute turbo training session, and I'll warm up for about 15 minutes, and then from 15 minutes to 20 minutes, I'll ride within my sweet spot. So that will be between 114 and 148 watts, and hold that for 5 minutes, and recover for 5 minutes, and then from 20 minutes, and the next 5 minutes will be sweet spot again, and I'll get 3 of those in, and that's my turbo training session done. And I can certainly feel it in my legs and my chest and everything. Yeah.
Try those muscle tension intervals. In fact, I know Terry did it last week, and it's a leg buster. You will really feel it. I'm not selling it, am I? I love them. I love muscle tension intervals. Oh, look, my legs still hurt from Sacalobra. Come on, Terry, suck it up.
So we've got a question from Dave Robertson. How do you feel with Leonard cheating on you with another instructor? 2 trainers surely isn't beneficial for a good program. Well, before Chris answers that, I'm going to say, for me, you're obviously talking about the chats that I have with Gary Palmer. And for me, Gary's kind of giving me the bigger picture, what you should be doing, and Chris is giving me the kind of how I'm going to do that, on a sort of micro, almost, workout by workout kind of basis. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
I'm gutted, actually, Dave. I'll answer that. I'm gutted. I cry a lot. I know. He's like that, is Leonard.
Yeah. So, okay, we've got a Logan Armstrong. Is it okay to do sprints while base building, or is this counterproductive?
Not really. I mean, it depends what. It depends what. I mean, you've got to have a bit of fun, right? So you don't want to be sitting there doing, And there's nothing. I wouldn't say it's counterproductive. If you were doing, an hour's worth of anaerobic training in the middle of your base building, I'd probably say that's not great. But if you're just doing, a few sprints at the end of a session, no, and what do you mean by sprints? So that's a term that people use, especially in indoor cycling, not in spinning. In spinning, a sprint is a very specific kind of effort. It's a very heavy resistance with high leg speed. Think Mark Cavendish when he's kind of punching for the line of the Tour de France. You are putting on a big amount of gear, but up in your leg speed. I know some indoor cycling programs, they'll call a sprint sitting there with no resistance, just banging your legs around at 130 RPM, which is no point at all. So if you're talking heavy resistance, 10-second sprint, fill your boots. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Okay, we've got I can't even begin to pronounce. Hi to both of you, thank you. We're watching all the way from South Africa. Thank you. We're doing a mix of sweet spot and HIIT videos. Terry said he was always Terry was kind of at the front of the class with me there. Like I say, he was just to my right a bit.
He was, right at the very front.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see how hard he was working, but I had my glasses on, so I couldn't.
Rob from Cape Town. Hi, Leonard and Chris. Exactly 6 weeks ago, you did an FTP test with Chris. As Chris then suggested, you said that you would repeat it in 6 weeks' time. When are you going to do it again? 5 or 20-minute test. Now, Rob from Cape Town seems to almost have a personal interest in my FTP. So I think, I will be doing another FTP test, but maybe I'll keep the results to myself. So I should do that soon, I think. Because nobody believes me if I say, my FTP is X. People are going to be saying, it can't possibly be that. And if I do something to prove it, they'll say, the test was wrong, or
you could always say, if there's an improvement, how much percentage improvement there is. But they know your base number now, so you've given the game away.
So maybe it's something I should just keep to myself.
I don't share my data with anybody, by the way. My husband doesn't even know what my FTP is, because my FTP is my FTP. So, there we go.
Okay, so the chat things. Last cheek from Dave Robertson. That's a bit random. Well, the Italian version. Okay.
Oh, no, Dave. I was making friends with you there, but you've mentioned two words that should never be mentioned in a sentence in front of a spinning instructor. But anyway, by the by.
Okay, what? Just need the fatness, not fitness, to drop off. Yeah, I think. Yeah, we all need that, Terry. Okay, Dave Robertson, can we see Leonard do an FTP test after a month on EPO to see the improvements? Yeah, sounds very clever. Yeah, EPO.
Can't get hold of it in lockdown, I don't think.
So Terry's trying to...
Sprint heavy resistance, yes. You know that, Terry.
Jeffrey Joy, we are entitled to know everything about you.
No.
Including my inside leg measurement. But if you're entitled to know everything, then maybe that gives you the responsibility to kind of, I don't know, where am I going with this? I don't know. You're a public figure, Leonard, like the Prime Minister. I certainly hope not. Not like Boris, blimey. I wouldn't want his job for all the world. Loved the FTP video. Certainly inspired me. Okay, I think you were quite a cyclist, I seem to remember, Terry. So, Guy Kim Richards is asking, new to cycling, does a 59-39 chainring 11-28 cassette become easier uphill, or should I get a bike with a compact? Oh no, that's not a that's a standard, isn't it? That 39. Yeah. I would say if you're struggling with a standard, then yeah, maybe go for a compact. All my bikes are compact, being somewhat gravitationally challenged. If I had a regular standard chain set, it would be just that little bit harder. I never have any issues even with the compacts when I'm going downhill. I never use my top gear ever, so I don't need anything harder. I need things easier, but I think it just depends on you and how difficult or easy you find it climbing. If it's tough, then go for a compact, definitely.
And just a note on that, I've got a new built Trek that has got a mountain bike setup on it, mountain bike gears. So I've only got a single ring at the front, not even a compact. I can climb anything now. And in fact, I took it out to Tenerife just last November. It's done a couple of trips. And if you do a lot of very long climbs, now I'm talking like 30, 40 kilometre climbs, like Alps climbs or up Mount Tady, I can sit there and it just takes the pressure off the legs. I can keep on top of the gear. So, yeah, there is that option as well.
But obviously, the lower the gear, the easier it is to spin and pedal, but the slower you're going to go up the climb.
So I can spin my legs up quite quickly and I can change the cadence, which just kind of breaks the monotony on the legs. Got a question there on diet recovery after a 90-minute indoor session. If you're doing a 90-minute indoor session, depending upon how cool you keep yourself, if you kind of overheating, you do need to be actually drinking a fair amount of fluid for a 90-minute session. I would typically go through 2 bottles in a 90-minute session if I was working really hard. One of those, I tend to favour water if I'm indoors. If I'm out on the road, I would use electrolyte. I use electrolytes in one bottle and water in the other, unless it's really hot, in which case I'd have it in both. But in terms of recovery, I would probably make sure you've got some electrolytes so you don't get cramps. And then straight after you get off the bike, within the first kind of 15 minutes or so, you want a good mix of protein and carbs. More protein than carb, because you're trying to fix the damage that you've just done.
You can actually get some specific recovery.
Yeah, you can get some recovery fuel, or just I tend to just eat some peanuts or something. just when I've finished a workout, just some nuts, a small handful of nuts.
Is that enough protein? And
Yeah, it's fine. And then, it depends what time you're working out. If you just need a quick snack, just you can get yourself a protein bar or just some nuts or something, and then have a meal not that long afterwards, and that would be fine. Yeah. Okay.
Logan Armstrong has one more question. When will I know I am ready to start aerobic threshold workouts? How big does the base need to be?
Your aerobic base can never be big enough. It's something you work on. Pro cyclists take years to build up their aerobic base, their aerobic endurance, and they just keep at it all the time. Which is why you'll find actually a lot of the pro cyclists can be older, is because they've got that so much aerobic endurance that, something like a pro rider who's on the road for 6 hours at a time, apart from a sprinter, it's not about that explosive power, it's just about banging out those efforts for hours and hours and hours, and that's where you're really pulling in your aerobic endurance. So how long? Well, that depends on so many issues. How old you are, what kind of training you've got, how much training you're doing. It's the kind of thing, if I was doing a one-to-one session, I'd do quite a lot. I'd be asking a lot of questions. Certainly, if you've never been on an indoor bike or a road bike, I would spend at least a month working just on doing aerobic stuff. Keeping your heart rate below threshold, up to maximum 80% of your heart rate. Just keep doing that, and then just slowly increase it and see how you feel. Yeah, I would stay away from those big efforts. And if you're, not so much at the moment, but if you're in a class or an indoor setup with a studio, don't feel pressure from people around you. I used to always say to my clients, this is your ride, you work at, whatever intensity. And if you've got someone who's recovering, or maybe, my pregnant ladies in my class, then clearly their goals for doing the class are very different to everybody else. So don't be pushed to do something that you're not comfortable with or that fits in with your training goals. So, yeah, that's my main thing. It's again with riding out on the road. If you've got people that you ride with people who've got similar goals to you. Don't feel under pressure to do stuff that you're not comfortable with.
And I'd just like to add here that for me personally, if I'm going from square one I'll do 1,500 kilometres or about 65 hours of seat time. And that's when I personally think I've kind of got somewhere with my aerobic base, and that obviously can take 12 weeks, or it could take 10 weeks to achieve, depending on the weather, depending on how many times I go out. So it's just, whenever you kind of feel that you've got a bit fitter and you'd like to start getting a bit faster, that's when I would maybe, very, very rough rule of thumb, say that you've kind of achieved your aerobic base.
Your aerobic base is your aerobic fitness you will hang on to. So what tends to go is the top end stuff, the top end speed and power, but the low end stuff, the aerobic endurance, lasts much, much longer. So as you get older, it's kind of cumulative. You just keep building and building and building, and that you will lose that last, which is good news.
Okay, so Carl Bryant saying, help with winter riding, please. That's a very vague question. I don't know, perhaps if you...
well, where's your winter? Are you in California? In which case, get out on the road.
Yeah, because I think Northern California has a very similar climate to the UK. That's my understanding of it. And Southern California's a lot warmer. Okay. Yeah. But if you're in Canada and it's 3 meters of snow and minus 10 degrees Celsius, then there was a chap in Sweden on the Jolly Good Velo Facebook.
Oh, I saw that.
He did a ride in minus 16 degrees Celsius.
Bonkers. Totally
absolute
bonkers.
Hardcore.
Go off his head. Yeah. Sorry. You're off your head.
But I suppose if you're living in Sweden and, that's the kind of temperatures that That does sound a little bit extreme, even for Sweden. I would have thought to go cycling in, but yeah, just got to. As they say, there's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing.
Well,
I'm not sure I believe that entirely.
No, I don't. No. Question there off Jeffrey. Zone 1 recovery rides be substituted for days off from any exercise. You can't do any damage doing a recovery ride, but it has to, and again, there's lots of research on this. One of the sources of information that I use, and in fact, I really, if you want any information on bike training, there's an organisation called FastCat, that's FASCAT, FastCat. They do some really good training programs. In fact, they did the 12-week sweet spot program that I did. I used Training Peaks. But they're kind of, and he's an ex-pro rider, the guy who runs that setup. Recovery rides, the jury's out on, whether or not you get any benefit from them. A recovery ride has to be at zone 1. It has to be really, really low intensity, maximum of 30 minutes. I can't remember the guy's name. That's awful. He never does recovery rides. He doesn't agree with them. He says you're better off sitting there with your feet up watching the TV. Actually, that's as a recovery from a big effort. So let your body just do its thing. So again, the jury's out. It's one of those things that some people say one thing, other people say another.
Yeah,
so
what a recovery ride isn't, though, is, I mean, I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times on Strava. People have, said that they've gone out for a recovery ride and then they've ridden for 100 kilometres at, a super high pace. They've ridden it in 3 hours or something. No, that's not a recovery ride. That's a ride.
30 minutes max, zone 1. And, I challenge you to cycle at zone 1 for more than 30 minutes because your boredom will set in. You will die of boredom. So that's one incentive to get off the bike after 30 minutes because you're so bored. I don't do recovery rides. I would tend to do, I'll do a lot of my biomechanics stuff and some Pilates. That's my recovery.
I think I personally would go out for a recovery ride or do something, maybe on the turbo. And for me, I don't know how accurate it is, but the thinking there is that you're just getting the blood flowing, a bit more oxygen to all the muscles that are tired and everything, just increase, just the nutrients flushing all the lactate.
You're better off doing a big long cool down after you've done your effort.
Okay.
Because you feel so stodgy in the legs, maybe, because you've got residual waste products sitting in the muscles. So
yeah, that's where I certainly feel it. The next day, if I've been out cycling, the next day I feel it in my quads.
So do a really long cool down at the end of your ride. Make the last 3K maybe. Mm-hmm. Really, really low intensity, just spinning the legs on a light gear. Yeah. So I've got, there's certain spots on my rides home, and I've done a really long ride on the road, where I'll send off my husband because he wants to just go quick. And I will just go, right, off you go. And I will spend a good long time dropping right down to the small ring, spinning the legs, slow, get the heart rate, and just keep moving the legs. And then the waste products will go. And you shouldn't need that ride the next day. There's nothing stopping you doing it, but you've got to do it at zone 1.
Okay. See where we are here with the Carl Gorath. I'm 6'4", tough for me maintaining 90 revs per minute. How important is it? And is 85 revs per minute good enough?
Okay, well, 6 foot, well, I don't think your height should make that much difference to how quickly. Oh, I'm stirring up a hornet's nest here, I can tell. In fact, I'm recording tomorrow. I'm recording a Cadence ladders workout, which starts at 80 RPM and goes up to 110 RPM. Now, if you're really finding it, you don't actually say why you find it tough to maintain 90 RPM. Is that because you've maybe got too much gear on the bike? If you've got a lot of gear and you're trying to spin the legs at 90 RPM, then your heart rate is going to skyrocket. So that's my first point. if it's tough because aerobically it's become quite difficult because you're working really hard, then you need to drop the gear down. Now, if you have dropped the gear, then you're really going to have really smart and smooth pedaling technique, because to smoothly pedal at those higher cadences up to 110 RPM, you've got to have a really fantastic smooth stroke. Because if you overly drive, and the pedal stroke starts at 12 o'clock, goes round to 3 and then 6 and then 9 and then back round again. The power phase is typically between about 11 o'clock round to about 5 o'clock on that clock face. Most novice riders will drive, they'll get to the top of the stroke and then they'll stamp really hard on the pedals to generate the power, to generate the drive. Now you can kind of get away with that at lower cadences and with more gear on the bike, because you're it's called pedaling squares, because all you're doing is you're doing that. You're kind of just stamping up and down. If you look at a pro rider, you look at their legs, look as if they're doing absolutely nothing. They look like they're not under any stress at all. That's because their stroke is really smooth all the way around. As one leg is driving down, there is some kind of uptake with the other leg. So it's kind of balanced. Again, this is a bit contentious because some people only pedal on the power phase. But if you're doing high cadence stuff, you've got to balance that drive effort with the pull effort. So the push and the pull have to be not equal, but there has to be some balance there. So as you pull the leg up at the back, what that does is the effect is it kind of sticks your bum to the saddle, and you get a smooth stroke all the way round. So is 85 RPM good enough? Good enough for what is my other question. It's good to mix up the cadence that you do on the bike, because what that does is it kind of if you're doing a really long ride, like a 40k Alps climb, and you stick at 67 RPM or 70 RPM, whatever your climbing cadence is, your legs are they get really fatigued very quickly. So what I tend to do is I will change up my cadence. So I'll change the gear and I'll just spin the legs for a little bit. Might lose a bit of a speed on the road. What it does is it kind of acts as just a break in the monotony, but it also just kind of frees up the legs a little bit. I would probably not go over 90 RPM in those circumstances, but yeah, I don't know what it means good enough for, if that makes sense.
I mean, I'll add here, there's no such thing as right or wrong when it comes to cadence.
No.
You pedal at your pedal rate, and that's it. But what I have found very recently is that you can use different cadences. Like you say, you can spin to give yourself a bit of a kind of a break, and then you can use the slower cadences to pick up a bit of speed. And I've noticed that when I'm spinning and using the higher revs, I'm actually sort of breathing a lot harder. And then when I change the gear up and start pedaling a little bit slower, then it's an issue of strength. Do I have enough strength? And eventually my kind of breathing kind of starts to catch up, and then I'll...
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there. If you're pedaling at higher cadences, again, it kind of depends who you are. So someone like Chris Byrd, if you notice when he's riding, he spins his legs quite quickly when he's climbing mountains. That's just physiologically how he's made. His legs will spin quite quickly. He doesn't tend to be a standing climber with more strength. He spins the legs up to generate the power, and I suspect that's quite a lot of power actually. But it kind of depends who you are. Your legs will settle into a certain cadence, and you just have to go with that. There's no right or wrong answer.
No. I think you can improve it. You can work on it if you so choose. But if that's what you pedal at, if that's what I call your home cadence, then that should be fine. And then the speed is basically down to gear selection and strength. But if a good bike fit here is also very important. If the bike fits wrong, then that could also hinder your cadence. But if everything's correct, the fact that you're spinning or riding, your cadence is at 85, I wouldn't worry about that at all.
And you can practice, do some cadence drills. So, do some cadence drills and work on your pedaling technique. It's a bit like sprinters, a running sprinter, they move their legs very, very quickly. In normal day-to-day life, we tend not to move our legs that quick. They're just not used to it. So you can train them to move a lot quicker. It's a skill. Yeah, it's a
I've
skill.
certainly noticed on the turbo trainer, I'd say this time last year, my average cadence was about 90 revs per minute. And then I was doing a lot of turbo training workout where my cadence was much higher. And now out on the road, I would say my cadence is on average about 95 revs per minute.
Wow, go you. Mine's
but I'm in a very low gear. I'm not,
Okay, yeah. I'm a strength cyclist. I absolutely am, because that's just, my cadence is a lot lower, but I've spent many, many years working on my muscular strength. Got a question there from John Williams. Struggle to do more than an hour on a smart trainer, boredom. John, have you been over to my channel? I'll happily sit for an hour on a turbo trainer. Don't just sit there on your turbo trainer. I'm jesting here. Do a workout where you get distracted. So pick something that keeps your excitement up and keep it structured. So some of my workouts are very structured intervals, and I guarantee you the time goes really, really quickly. If you're doing structured intervals on a turbo, time goes like that, honestly. Do you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think back in the day, obviously, the old school cyclists, in the days before things like Zwift and structured workouts on the internet, they would just get on the turbo trainer and just pedal away, one intensity, sweat like billy-o.
And that's not doing anything.
Well, that's what they would do, isn't it? And I would say you can only do about 45 minutes to an hour of that before you're bored or you just can't physically do that anymore. But yeah, like you say, the structured workouts, because you're sort of having that intensity and recovery, and you're looking forward to the next period of recovery. And
I look forward to the next period of intensity.
All right, that's the difference between us right there, Chris.
Yeah, you see, I like the pain. That's me.
No, I like the relief from the pain. But no, if you're doing that sort of cycle of intensity and recovery, then yes, it does go a lot quicker. Music helps quicker as well. The right sort of music helps. But, yeah.
Get yourself some structure in there, and find what it was with, or look at a channel. Mine's lovely. Come and have a look at my channel. Come and spend some time with me. Rob's mentioned there. Yeah, I haven't got my notes in front of me, Rob. Sweet spot training, 75% to. It's not really 85. 85% is what we would class as your FTP heart rate, so I would suggest it's slightly lower than that. 75% maybe to 83%. Now, if you've been VO2 max tested and you know what your threshold heart rate is, then it may well be 85. Mine's 88%. But for the kind of average population, we would suggest that 97% of your FTP would be a max heart rate of 83%. Better on the lower side than the higher side. You don't need to know your FTP to do sweet spot training. Absolutely not. No, you're quite right. You don't. Use your heart rate. Or go on feel. If you can't breathe in and out through your nose, so nasal breathing, you should be able to hold on to nasal breathing just about. If you've kind of tipped over and you're dragging the breath in and out through your mouth, then I would suggest you've gone too hard. Back off a bit.
Okay, and we've got a question from Martin Corner. Now, before
hello, Martin. Is that Martin from Active? I think it's from the gym.
Well, I know he's local. And as an aside here, if you watch my ride vlogs, I'm regularly doing a route that I call the Buns, Bent and Hoe, and that's because I ride along Buns Lane, Bent Lane, and then Hoe Road. and where Bent Lane meets Hoe Road and Bent Lane, that's actually called Martin Corder. So it's literally got Martin's name on it. So
okay. I think Martin is actually from our old gym, as it happens.
Okay.
But anyway, my YouTube channel. No, I haven't said what my YouTube channel is. I don't know if Leonard can put comments in afterwards, but anyway, it's Ikigay, which is IK. I'm gonna have to write it down. It's a lot of.
I might be able to put a title up on the odds. Let me see if I can do that.
It's IKIGAI UK. I don't know. Leonard's put it up on my channel. So, loads of workouts. I'm currently at the moment putting 2 workouts up a week. I'm working quite hard to get a lot of content up for you over the winter.
So let me just slip that.
Richard, I've been ill for a week. Sorry about that. That's really rubbish. We're all ill at some point and injured. Ill for a week and worried I've lost my fitness. Okay, well, you can have a week off without doing much damage. Once you start to, there you go, Ikigay, with a space in between the I and the UK.
Okay,
but anyway.
just
you typically can. Oh, thank you, David. He's put it up there. You can do a week off the bike without losing too much form, to be honest. And you might be doing your body, giving it a pat on the back, and it's you shouldn't cause too much damage losing a week on the bike. When it starts to go out to 2 weeks, then you could potentially start to lose some form. But if you've been, had a virus, for example, I'm not quite sure how poorly you've been or what you've had. But when you come back, start nice and easy. Just do some aerobic stuff, and then be kind to yourself. I'm all for that. Being kind to yourself. Do some aerobic stuff, and then if you feel a little bit better after a week, then you can push it out a little bit harder.
And definitely don't start cycling again before you feel that you're sort of ready to.
Don't. You do more damage if you come back too early. You definitely do more damage. And a note on viruses: if you've got a virus, you shouldn't really do heavy efforts. If I've got a bit of a cold, I might do some very low intensity work, but I certainly wouldn't push it hard. Yeah. Viral, yes. So, just, listen to your body. If you do something and you feel really rubbish afterwards, then give yourself another few days recovery and then just come back nice and gently.
Cool. Okay, well, it's just coming up to an hour now, and I know that the system here is booked out for later, so I'm going to have to call it a day. So it's thank you very much to Chris for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching and for all of your questions. Again, sorry for the kind of technical issues regarding the latency where the lip sync is a little bit out, but that's something I hope to remedy in the future. If you like this kind of live stream and the chat, then let us know, and hopefully we can arrange some more. And Chris, I think we're also planning on some live turbo training workouts, aren't we?
Yay!
But obviously, hopefully, we can only really do that once the COVID situation has been resolved. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have those at some point. But again, thank you everyone for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
It's been really lovely.
Bye.
Thank you.